Still sport.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 2 minutes past 8 here on LBC. Welcome to Wednesday's Cross Question. With me in the studio, to my left, Stella, Creasy, the Labour MP for Walthamstow. I was going to say my far right, but I can't say that, can I?
Thank you,
I can't say that.
No, I do appreciate
Given that you supported Tom Tugendhat, didn't you?
Yeah.
So you can't be far right if you supported him. Steve Baker, former Conservative MP and Minister. To my immediate right, Jemma Forte, broadcaster, who's the co-host of the global original podcast, The Trawl. And we are expecting a fourth panellist who hasn't yet shown up. So where are you? We will hopefully find out in the next couple of minutes. So, lots to talk about tonight, not just Tory stuff either. Lots going on in the world, the hurricane that is about to affect Florida, what's going on in the Middle East. So do get your fingers dialing. 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp us with a question on that number. You can text 84850, and we'd love you to watch us on Global Player.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Right, let's get cracking with our first caller. It's Cynthia in Glastonbury. Hello, Cynthia.
Hello, Ian. My question is, do you think the Conservatives have scored an own goal by throwing out poor, Mr.
James
Cleverly?
Throwing out poor Mr. Cleverly. Well, that's an interesting way of putting it, it has to be said. Steve Baker, let's come to you first.
No, of course they haven't. And Cynthia, you're very sweet to say that, and James, I know, will appreciate it. He is a lovely guy, very, very affable. He makes people feel better about themselves, and I'm sure that he will always have a place at the top table of the Conservative Party as long as he's an MP. But somebody had to go out, and it was James.
Had you been still in the Commons, who would you have voted for in this round? Because, as I said, you started by supporting for Tom Tugendhat.
If I was still an MP, I probably wouldn't answer the hypothetical, but...
but you're not anymore, so you can.
Yeah, I think we're an MP. I think in this round I would have voted for Kemi.
Why?
Authenticity. I mean, she believes with great passion in truly conservative principles, and yeah, people will criticise sometimes her communication, but that can be fixed. But we need somebody who's authentic and strong and ferociously committed, actually, to what they believe. Politics is tough. It's war minus the shooting, in my view. And, you know, Kemi's authenticity and her true belief, her intellect, will carry her through, and I've got a great deal of faith that she'll do a good job.
She would be a risk, though, wouldn't she?
Look, anyone's a risk. Anyone can make a mistake on media. Anyone's a risk.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think the truth is nobody's ever actually ready to be Prime Minister or indeed Leader of the Opposition. No one, ever. It doesn't matter what jobs you've had. Tony Blair hadn't been a minister before he became Prime Minister, nor had David Cameron. They've been around politics a lot. But no one's ever ready. Everyone's got their virtues and their vices, their flaws and their risks. And the perfect candidate's never available.
Do you think that there is an issue, though, here? Because the Conservative Party members have essentially got two right-wingers to choose from. Although, I mean, Robert Jenrick did not start his parliamentary journey as a right-winger, but he's portraying himself as that now. Just from a choice point of view, I mean, people have been contacting me all day saying, I can't believe I can't vote for the candidate that I wanted to vote for. Well, that's the system. That's just how it works. You can argue to change the system in future, but nobody has over the last 20 years. But might it not have been better to have somebody from the sort of centre-right and somebody from the right?
Yeah, but I mean, these categorisations do somewhat break down a bit. I mean, James Cleverly was pro-Brexit. He's always been very free market. Tom was calling for a conservative revolution. I mean, where's the left and right in this? A lot of, with my limited experience of Conservative MPs and what they're like, a lot of the people who are regarded as centrists, actually, for them, it's about tone and style. And rather than substance, we listen to Tom. He's free market. He's pro-liberty. He voted with me against vaccine passports. And you know, he would be regarded as a centrist in the party. So I think the Conservative Party is capable of pulling together and building a broad coalition. And you know, I'd say to members, well, all right, you know, look at Rob's journey, because he has had a journey and he was regarded as a centrist, and we'll need to flesh all that out in the next few weeks up to the ballot closing for members on the 31st of October.
Halloween, Jemma Forte. Is that appropriate?
Seems a strange date to
it does
pick
seem.
from the calendar.
Whose bright idea was that, I wonder?
Yeah, very strange cause.
So, Jemma, as somebody on the left, what do you make of the shenanigans over the past 24 hours?
I personally think this is terrible for the Conservatives. I think James Cleverly probably would have been the best candidate for the party, in my view. And it's all subjective, right? We all have our opinions, and they are just based on...
That's what this programme's about.
Exactly. So my instinct is I don't share your view of Kemi Badenoch at all. From my perspective...
Badenoch.
Badenoch, I beg your pardon.
Says, there's nothing bad in Badenoch.
OK, Badenoch.
That's the way to remember it.
OK, thank you. So for me... there were 3 blunders within quite a short period of time that sort of almost made me gasp. One was saying that a big percentage of civil servants should be imprisoned. That would be about 25,000 people.
Yeah, which was meant to be not taken literally,
okay.
Clearly.
All right. But she also sort of described social care workers very disparagingly as bottom wipers, and I didn't think that was the right tone for those people who we really need in society. What was the third thing? Oh, yeah, excessive maternity pay, which, so it's all very well saying somebody shoots from the hip, somebody, tells it how it is, but what they're saying is sort of bizarre. I think that's a worry. And then it worried me more that when she got some backlash, she tried to pretend she hadn't said it, and I saw Matelist, on her, and she just sort of gaslighted her, really sort of said, I didn't say that. And it's like, well, you did, and it's gone viral. So either say, do you know what, with hindsight, I just spoke, I spoke badly, I didn't mean it, or I meant it because. So I think that from Labour's point of view, or the Lib Dems' point of view, whoever you want to say, I think it's a good result for them. But is that what I want for the country? I personally want politics to calm down and get sensible again. I don't think it has been for years and years and years. So, yeah, great for my podcast, but that's not what I'm all about. I didn't start a podcast because I wanted to make money. I started a podcast because I was aghast at what was happening. So I genuinely wouldn't mind it calming down and me not caring about any of it ever again.
Lovely. Agreed.
OK, we're delighted to welcome Tim Montgomerie to the panel. Tim wasn't supposed to be here, because we should say that it wasn't you that was late, it's somebody who hasn't turned up.
I like to think of myself as the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer of last substitution guests.
Or to go back to a previous era, David Fairclough, the super sub, the Liverpool.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to sort of... I know you've been talking about this on a rival channel for the last hour.
Yeah.
Not that there is a rival channel, obviously. So let's hear from Stella Creasy. Now, I keep being told by my Labour friends that they are delighted that it's Kemi Badenoch versus Robert Jenrick, because they think they have nothing to fear from either of those.
I'm a Democrat as well as a socialist, so I think it does matter to have good, honest debate about the challenges facing the country. I'm not massively excited about the rabbit hole that I fear that both Kemi and Robert Jenrick would like to take this country down, of a kind of politics of who do you blame? Because actually, and I'm loving Zen Steve, absolutely loving Zen Steve right now. And the lessons.
To be fair, he's always been a bit zen.
No.
I haven't even been skydiving recently.
But you're very and you're right about, look, we set impossible targets. The challenge I have with Kemi, and I was in the chamber this afternoon with her, and I could see an entire backdrop of Conservative MPs on tenterhooks, and not in a good way, about how she was debating how patronising she could be to people in the chamber. So the question isn't whether you are ready, it's whether you are listening, and whether you can show the public that you understand why, after 14 years, they'd absolutely had enough of your party. And if I'm honest, I haven't heard that from any of the Conservative candidates. So it's not the individuals that I think you're relaxed about, it's the understanding the question of capacity, that basically everything we got to the end of a Conservative government they promised they were going to do just didn't happen. Hospitals didn't get built. Boats didn't get stopped. The economy wasn't getting better for people. They didn't feel change was happening. And I don't see in any of the candidates at the moment an honest recognition of that, and therefore what the big challenges will be. Now, you'll say, hang on, well, is Labour there either? And it's a challenge I would put to my own party, is actually, do we want to go down the rabbit hole of more politics where you find somebody to blame why the world isn't a great place, or do you want to start looking at solutions? You and I might have disagreed about the solutions, Steve, but I actually always respected the fact that you were very solution interested.
Well, thank you, and likewise.
It's not that's not what I'm hearing from the. You've got a choice between a man who went out there and made some outrageous claims about our special forces, really genuinely, completely unacceptable, outrageous claims in his pursuit of trying to argue against the ECHR, and a woman who absolutely trashed maternity pay and then tried to claim that she hadn't. Neither is good for democracy, because it doesn't deal with moving the debate onto, there are big choices ahead, what are the different parallel parties about what they're going to do.
Who do you think Keir Starmer would most like to face at PMQs? Now, I know it's not all about PMQs, but it is part of it.
But I think either, because neither of them reflect at the moment an understanding of the challenge and what the country are looking for as politicians who get it. And I know people will ask questions of us about whether we get it. What are they angry about? What do they feel needs to be different? It is not what you've seen coming out of the Conservative Party at the moment. It's not been an honest recognition of the challenges ahead for the country and what role they could and should have played for it and what happens next. It's been tub-thumping to your backbenchers. And the backbenchers I saw today were terrified about another mishap. And if you're at that point, sometimes politics is like stand-up, isn't it? And if you're feeling sorry for the person on the stage and you want them to finish because you just think it's embarrassing, that's where Kemi Badenoch had got, and where Jenrick got Badenoch. Sorry, no, that's the northern accent in me coming out. Badenoch. If people are feeling awkward rather than inspired, that is a problem.
OK. Tim Montgomerie. Now, you didn't start off as a Robert Jenrick supporter, but I read on your Twitter, was it yesterday, that you have been converted.
I have. I've been an admirer of Robert for a while, actually. I think, Tom was absolutely my first choice candidate. But unlike my friend Stella, I think he's generally wrestling with the fact that a lot did go wrong under Conservative government, actually. He saw a lot of dysfunction in government, and I think he's on a journey. And people should be on a journey at the moment in politics, because the fact is, we're quite parochial, I think, in our discussion. And you can look at the Conservative Party being in trouble. Labour aren't finding government that easy, I think, Stella. Some people have actually noticed that. But when you look around the Western world, actually, you look at Germany, you look at France, you look at America, there's hardly a political party, an established political party in the Western world that is firing on all cylinders. For whatever, something has entered the bloodstream where government is incredibly difficult. Electorates are volatile. They turn on politicians quickly and not often on the most important of issues. I think Robert Jenrick is trying to come to terms with the fact that some things he did in government worked, but many didn't. And so he is asking the questions that I think the Conservative Party needs to ask in opposition. More than Kemi Badenoch, I think he is asking about housing, not just immigration. He's asking about the NHS. He's asking about the economy. My worry about Kemi Badenoch is that she's slightly pugilistic, maybe very pugilistic, and also she largely focuses on cultural war issues rather than the broader set of issues that the electorate faces. I think Robert is generally a broader candidate.
Tim, we all saw that
You sounded like my mum when you
said
Tim.
Right up until that point, but come on, that video where he claimed that our forces are killing people rather than deal with international justice because of the ECHR. I mean, that is demeaning. That's why people are angry with politicians. It's because we say outrageous things to get attention rather than actually trying to come up with solutions. That was inexcusable.
And in the midst of all this talk about freebies and donations and everything, which clearly needs to be sorted out across the board, totally. Jenrick's £75,000 donation came from a man who's creating an app, who's based in the British Virgin Islands.
Ian, can I just
that
answer?
Was on GMB.
Can I just answer the question that was posed? And I will not use the word, so don't press the trapdoor button underneath me. But today,
I just don't know what the word is.
You'll get it in a minute.
I'm rather anxious now.
It is before the watershed. I am just going to...
Chris, if you could get your finger over that button, I'd be really grateful.
In the history of Tory leadership elections, we really just have had one of the biggest F-ups you could really have imagined. The fact is that clearly lending of votes happened between the Cleverly campaign and they boosted probably Robert Jenrick. And now what should have been a real choice for party members and in some ways the country between a moderate guy, Reagan-esque, sunny side up, perhaps not particularly defined policies, and Robert Jenrick, who perhaps has a less attractive personality but very clear policy positions, has been denied to them.
I want to play poker with you if you think it was that way round.
Hang on,
Come on, Mr.
hang on a
Jenrick
second. Because what Robert Jenrick's campaign, I think, did yesterday, nobody spotted
You
this.
think it happened yesterday?
I think it all happened yesterday, where Jenrick's people lent their votes to Cleverly, and they were rather horrified at the fact that he'd gone up so much, and then Cleverly's people thought they were being
That is
clever.
a charitable interpretation, because the other interpretation was possibly it was about knocking Mr. Tugendhat out. I mean, I don't know.
I think that was always going to happen. happen.
But it does
I'm
rather
afraid.
look like the skullduggery afoot.
But I know for a fact that the Cleverly campaign made a point of saying to their people, do not do this, do not lend people votes.
So I've heard something different.
Well, I know for a fact that those
spill the
orders
tea.
went out.
Well, I'm not sure they were issued by Grant Shapps, let's just say that.
Michael Green?
Oh, so you're blaming, because it's interesting, our political editor, Natasha Clark, was blaming him for a lot of this earlier, and I said I disagreed with her.
It definitely happened during the Boris campaign. Grant Shapps did a little bit of boasting about this. So obviously, he has the right to reply. He may deny this. But
If you're listening, Grant.
I have impeccable
You haven't got a spare
sources
chair
that
anymore.
he has history on this. And of course, he's no longer in Parliament. So what may have been better judged if he was there with colleagues all the time, I don't think was well judged.
That doesn't make sense of the numbers. Come on, Steve and I would have looked at the numbers and looked at where they
I think
jumped
what
to.
Iain has said, and you said, and what I could both be true. There might. This is an extraordinary thing to say, but the Tory party might have been guilty of skullduggery on 2 days, not just one.
sorry.
Come on,
Let's
let's
be-
go.
Hang on, Steve. No, Stella.
This is great fun for us all, but the public will listen to this and they'll be thinking, well, what on earth is going on? I just want to say to the public, it's tactical voting, and tactical voting happens in general elections. I'm very well aware that in 2019, 2,000 former Conservative voters voted Lib Dem to be rid of that Steve Baker over Brexit, and at this election it looks like they switched to the Labour Party to be rid of me, and it's not personal. They hate me over Brexit, I understand, and they voted tactically to be rid of me. And tactical voting is often encouraged in general elections, and tactical voting.
This isn't a general election.
Yeah, but I'm afraid
It
we
is an
can't.
election.
We can't.
Yes,
What's
but-
sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. People vote.
We could talk about this for the whole hour, and believe me, I'd quite like to, but I think we probably need to move on. It's 18 minutes past 8.
This is LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
20 past 8 on LBC. I never knew we could have so much fun talking about a Tory leadership contest, but there we go. That's what this programme
That's why we
tries to
like
do.
them so much, Ian. That's why we keep having them.
Don't worry, Steve. I think you're probably going to have another one.
Right.
You are as well. I think you are
Stella
as well.
Creasy is here, Labour MP for Walthamstow. Steve Baker, former Conservative MP and Minister. What are you going to do with yourself now? You're not in Parliament.
Do you know,
Save the
I'd
fish.
absolutely love to tell you that please don't say it,
Oh,
because
no,
it's
I
not
didn't know this.
October cleared yet. There's a committee called the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments. And let me tell you, I'm keeping them very busy with applications.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to... there seems to be some demand for me to be in the public debate, so I'm going to keep saying yes all the time I'm asked on. I've started a Substack. That's part of a community of think tanks I've created to amplify their voices, because I would like to fight for a free future, so it's called Fighting for a Free Future. But I've shaken hands on a couple of roles in the private sector that I'm incredibly proud of. One I hope to launch on Monday, but I can't talk about it until ACOBA have told me that I've got permission. It's been a number of weeks. I'm so excited about it. It's the sort of thing you wrote a book about. It's about how to help people deal with cognitive diversity, how to deal with difference.
You've written, how many books have you written here?
I don't even know what that means.
that one.
What was it? Why can't we all agree?
Yeah.
What was it called?
Why can't we all just get along?
Why can't we all just get along? And it's about the fact that people are hardwired to agree very strongly with their group, and they care what their group thinks about them a lot. And it leads to a real hostility and polarisation in conversations. Now, we can use behavioural science to break out of that, but I can't say any more about it until it's cleared.
Jemma Forte is here as well.
Yes.
Now, how's your podcast doing?
It's going really well, which was a surprise, really. We just started it in our bedrooms, myself and my Marina Perkis, who's a great friend, and she's a Twitter vigilante, I think.
That is one way of describing her. But don't you just agree with each other all the time?
Well, you know what? Loads of people said, it won't work because of that. It does work because we have a real laugh on it, but also we have jobs, we have, kids. We're just two sort of regular women who have strong views, but also it's not just our views. It's sort of, we look at what everybody else is saying on Twitter. We can plunder all of their humour and intellect. We play clips, and we can talk about whatever we want. And there's this huge freedom in coming to a creative endeavour and just doing it. And I've never had that in all my life. I've always worked for people who've told me what I'm going to talk about, or, we're going to do this. So it's quite freeing, Iain.
Tell me about it.
It's only taken 50 years.
Tim Montgomerie is here. Tim, people know you from ConservativeHome, but that is actually quite a long time ago now, isn't it?
I know.
What are you doing now?
But I tell you what, just on that sort of front is a couple of weeks ago we celebrated the formation of the Centre for Social Justice, something else I created with Iain Duncan-Smith. And when you realise you created something 20 years ago, when you begin to feel quite old. But my new project is a podcast called Not Another One, talking about podcasts. But I'm still smarting, Iain, from the fact that someone that I thought was a friend told me should have made quite a stern criticism of that.
He's
podcast.
not making eye contact.
Would you like to say anything, Iain, on this subject?
Well, if you wish to repeat what I said to you privately.
Not enough jokes in it.
I didn't say that. I said it possibly could be a little more humorous.
Anyway, my therapist
Every
says
time I
I'm
see him
beginning
nowadays,
to
he
recover.
brings this up. I thought I was helping. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Ed in Atherstone in Warwickshire says, this is going back to what we've been talking about. The next leader of the opposition, possibly the next Prime Minister, will be chosen not by elected members of Parliament, but by a tiny, self-selecting group of activists. Can we honestly call ourselves a parliamentary democracy?
Yes. Conservative voters are extremely welcome to join the Conservative Party, and I wish they would. I feel very strongly about this. One of the single biggest factors causing failure in democratic systems is non-participation. Political parties are not like companies which can just pop in and out of existence and provide customers with a choice of products and services. They are long-term institutions which only produce good quality product if you participate in them for the long run. And it's true that party membership is very low. I was selected by 110 people, I think, a long time ago. Really should have been more like 2,000. But if Conservative voters won't just join the Conservative Party for £25 a year and at least go to the candidate selections, well, then power will go to those who are in the room. But I would say that whichever political party you prefer, just join it. If Labour voters join the Labour Party, I should be happy. When Lib Dems, but just participate, please.
The problem is that I think all political parties have this. As soon as you join up, the next letter you get from them saying, "Can we have some more of your money, please?"
Oh well, yeah, absolutely. But
and there's no offer. There's no retail offering.
But that's
the problem.
This is a doom spiral, of course, because if Wickham Conservative Association had 2,000 members paying £10 a year, that would mean that it was quite a well-funded association. But, this is why the parties are desperate for funds. They just haven't got enough members.
But to the point that Texter says, Ed, I mean, it's a slightly pedantic point, but, I mean, given that now party members select the leaders, the thing for all the main political parties is possibly not Reform UK. But I don't know.
Well, Reform was owned by Nigel Farage. He's changing that, but it was his. So but
it's not is it a true parliamentary democracy if the MPs aren't choosing the leader?
I think sorry, I know Jemma wants to come in, but just remember how our constitutions evolved. There didn't used to be parties. Individuals got elected to Parliament, and then groupings formed like they still do, and eventually they become parties. But the Prime Minister is the person who can command a majority in the House of Commons. That's usually done through a political party, but it doesn't have to be.
Except that we got Liz Truss, and that was a disaster for all of us. And I don't think she'd have been selected if it had come down to the MPs. And so perhaps the people who've got to work with the leader might have more inside scoop on...
The problem is, though, can you take the vote away from people that you've given it to? That is a real dilemma, I think, because, I mean, I don't disagree with you, but... I mean, you would have probably 20% of Tory party members resigning if they felt that they could have no role in choosing the leader anymore.
Yeah, I think it's just because it is such a small number, as you say. I mean, I'm somebody who thinks that we should do maybe the Australian model where you make everybody vote in general elections as well. No, I really, really do. I think it would make people more engaged. I think you would get more of a habit.
Your leftward moves continues, Tim.
Right, you will be hearing from my solicitor in the morning, Dale.
You know, I just think the Conservative membership is a very certain demographic, and that's not to say that their opinion isn't valid, and absolutely there's...
Dare I say, that is a lazy thing to say, because a journalist can... I don't know what you and Steve think about this, but they are not this group... Sorry. They're not this group of head-banging right-wingers that they're portrayed as. Most of them perfectly normal people.
Yeah, but just Liz Truss.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and I think
OK, Tim.
Just on that, look, Tory members aren't perfect, but actually the problem...
Nobody is, Tim.
Well, actually... No, the Tory members aren't perfect, but actually the main problem in that election was it was the shortlist MPs gave them. Actually, members at that time, they probably wanted Badenoch, they wanted Tugendhat, they wanted people like Sajid Javid or Nadine
They actually wanted Penny Mordaunt.
They want Penny Mordaunt, yeah. They were given a shortlist of Rishi Sunak, probably one of the least politically able people that we've seen at the top of politics, and Liz Truss. It wasn't their fault, really. They had such a bad shortlist. And my experience of Tory members is, and Iain and Steve may or may not agree with this, is they're painted as sort of like old-fashioned, sometimes bigoted. But when they've had black, ethnic minority, gay candidates put before them in associated meetings, again and again they choose them. In a way, at least as much as the Labour Party.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I didn't say that.
No, I know, but I'm just trying to defend them. But, they're a small number, and they're older, but they're grands, they're granddads, they're in touch with, the younger generation. They know their aspirations. It's not perfect, but also, in this leadership election, I tell you, one of the most powerful forces will be opinion polls. The Tory party, I think, more than the Labour Party, does like a winner in charge. And so the electorate do have an influence on Tory leadership elections by the canvassing of public opinion. So, like with all of these elections, it's more complicated than perhaps a surface reading would make out.
Stella,
I'm reading, old-fashioned, I'm actually reading the question from Ed, because I don't think I fully understand it, and forgive me, this may be a misreading of the Conservative president. So Ed is saying, not chosen by elected members of Parliament. In your system, a smaller pool of people is put to the selectorate altogether because you only pick two. I mean, I do not sit here in judgment with the Labour Party system. We've seen ups and downs in that. There is a fundamental challenge here that only 60% of people took part in the last general election, full stop. Participation, engagement, confidence in the idea that any political party and any political process is worth it is waning, and that damages us all, because then what I call the moon and stick politics comes along, and we've got that on left and right, people who promise the earth, fully confident, and they're never going to be challenged about it. But in terms of what he's actually asking, it was elected members of Parliament who have chosen two, and it does seem rather similar candidates. And if you can flip easily between Kemi and Tom, it doesn't feel like there's much variation there compared to a system which would have offered more people, but actually would have brought in more complications about, fundamentally, are you facing the challenges the country face? Because I think the underpinning this question isn't the idea that somehow MPs will want somebody who can connect and communicate. But first of all, you've got to believe that you understand what the challenge is. And I'm not sure that this result and what's happened and all the skullduggery, we might laugh about it, but it doesn't speak volumes of understanding why 40% of the public don't take part in politics or don't feel like they want to join. And we've all got that challenge in our political movement.
Right. Final word before we go to the news to Saif, who says, this is weird. I think I like Steve Baker.
Do you know, it's amazing how often that happens, Saif.
Zen
it happens so often. It's a great pity
just
that
not in your former constituency.
Can I just say, it's what a pity it is I came to prominence during the controversy of the Brexit war. wars. Because that was, what does Bismarck say? This is the one useful thing that Cummings taught me. With a gentleman and a half, and with a pirate and a half. And I'm afraid I came to prominence when I was doing pirate and a half.
Are you Long John Silver? What? I don't...
No, you just sometimes...
No, I don't get that. Anyway, while you listen to the news, we're going to ask Steve what on earth was he talking about.
Sometimes you have a fight.
It's 8:31 on LBC. Daryl Jackson has the news headlines.
Florida's state governor Rob DeSantis has warned Hurricane Milton is going to pack a major punch. Almost 6 million people have been told to leave their homes with the hurricane due to hit overnight, UK time. The race to replace Rishi Sunak is now down to the final two, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch. James Cleverly was knocked out in the final round of voting by Conservative MPs. A 26-year-old man's been arrested on suspicion of murdering a woman in Belfast. Mary Ward is the fourth woman to be killed in just 6 weeks in Northern Ireland. LBC weather, light rain for southern England and much of Wales for much of the night. Scattered showers for northern areas and a low of 2 degrees.
LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
It's 8:34. If you've missed the last half an hour, it's been quite raucous. You might want to catch up on the Cross Question podcast, which will be released at 11 o'clock this evening. With us on the panel, Stella Creasy, Labour MP for Walthamstow. I was saying last night on the programme that I regard it as almost criminal that you're not a minister.
Yeah.
Will you stop trying to kill what's left of my career? Thank you very much.
I was trying to be nice. Steve Baker is a former minister and former Conservative MP. Jemma Forte, broadcaster, co-host of the Trawl podcast. And Tim Montgomerie, who is... What's your podcast called again?
Not another one.
Not another
After Brenda
one.
from Bristol, if you remember her.
I do remember her. Right, let's
I
go
have a
to...
podcast.
Do you?
Yes, nobody listens to it.
What's it called?
It's called The Mumifesto. It's about where parenting and politics combine.
Oh, marvellous.
The Mumifesto.
Zen Steve. You should come on, Steve. We could have a great
I'm not a
conversation.
parent. I'm not sure that it would
It's
work
not
out.
about being a parent. It's about how your family, all those conversations that are happening in the background that influence how people see the world, but we don't really talk about in public policy.
You know what might happen though, Stella? We might do such a good job that people want us to continue as a
you think we might be competition for Ian? And is it Harriet or is it... I don't know who your partner is now that Jackie's left you.
She's defected to the sky while I'm trialling out a load of people.
Have you tried out, Stella?
Not yet.
What'd you
I beg your pardon.
I told you there was a watershed.
Anyway, let's move swiftly on to Chris in Stubbington, because I'll have Corey in my ear in a moment. Chris, what would you like to ask?
Hello, Ian and panel. Ex-Labour MP Rosie Duffield has said in an interview the Prime Minister is surrounded by an abusive boys' club. Is she right?
So this is Rosie Duffield, the former Labour MP for Canterbury, she hasn't defected. She's just declared that she's not taking the Labour whip anymore, so she's become an independent MP. There are more independent MPs in this Parliament than I think for decades. She's told the Daily Telegraph that the abusive boys' club, her words not mine, around the Prime Minister is responsible for Sue Gray's departure from Downing Street. She's also previously claimed that Keir Starmer himself has a problem with women. It reminds me, Tim Montgomerie, of our very good friend Nadine Dorris, what she used to say about David Cameron and George Osborne.
Yeah, well, that's fair. I'm not plugged enough into Downing Street to know whether that's true or not, or fair or not. What I have heard, and you see it actually with Keir Starmer in media interviews, is he doesn't really like to get much scrutiny. And when the questions get tough, a little bit like that Beth Rigby, do you remember the Beth Rigby interview from Sky when he was asked about why he was staying at Lord Alley's flat? He was very tetchy, very tetchy. Now, what I worry about in any Prime Minister, any leader, is if you're in a job like that, you need to encourage around you people to come forward with constructive criticism. Because I think it was Tony Blair who said he only really got on top of the job of being Prime Minister at the end of his first term. So you really want to be a person who's seen to welcome people who are basically on your side but giving you constructive criticism. And what I understand and what I witness is not a Prime Minister who's open to that sort of feedback in the way that you would hope. But he does. So I can't really comment on the gender thing. Well, I do worry about that.
To be fair to him, he has got some very impressive senior women in his top team. Deborah Mattinson, who we both know. And there are several others that could be quoted whose names I now can't remember.
Yeah.
Rachel Reeves.
Well, I mean, the shadow cabinet's a bit different, but in his private office. In his private office. But of course,
she's not the shadow judge.
Rosie Duffield has hit the headlines on many occasions for her views on trans issues and gender identity. And it's fair to say that they probably don't go down very well with, shall we say, the more liberal-minded people on the left. And I think she's felt very lonely and almost being cast aside. And I think I think her accusation that he hasn't been very supportive of her when she's had the most terrible threats issued against her, I think there is something in that. She had a meeting with him apparently a few weeks ago. She said it lasted 20 minutes and he basically couldn't wait to end the meeting. Well, that was her impression of it. Anyway, well, I mean, Stella, you presumably know Rosie Duffield. I know you don't agree with her on the gender identity issues. Do you think she's got a point here?
I think there's two different things you're going for there, and I haven't talked to Rosie about her views on any of this. Is there a boys' club across politics? Yes, absolutely. There's a boys' club across the media. There's a boys' club across business in this country. There's a boys' club across academia, across the public sector. It is worrying to me that you've got whole cohorts of men who think that they understand equality, who think that they appoint on merit, but actually unconscious bias, all sorts of behaviours work to exclude women. And if you don't believe me, always look in politics why it is that women do events and men do strategy. So even when you have women in senior leadership positions, the expectation is they won't do the thinking bit, they'll do the organising bit. And that, for me, is a classic example of where that unconscious bias comes in about what strategic thinking, what political intelligence looks like. And some of the coverage we've seen over the last couple of weeks has been horrendous in that way, in that dismissal of somebody who was very clearly a very senior civil servant with a lot of expertise. Separate to that is the question about Rosie and her relationship. Because I don't know about that, it wouldn't be fair of me either way to comment on it. But if you're talking about, is there a challenge across politics where actually, frankly, some of the behaviour I saw when I was a young woman in politics I thought would be long gone by now, we've still got to deal with it. It's across every political movement and it's across all those people reporting on politics as well. So everybody is complicit and needs to challenge that. Why is it that at the moment it's the women leaders in terms of the women in the cabinet who are being critiqued on their policy making and there just seems to be a continual idea that somehow women can't cut it, and it's just not true.
Is that fair criticism? I mean,
why is it
I'm
people
just
are
sort of
talking
thinking
about Rachel Reeves,
because she's the Chancellor.
Bridget Phillips,
because they're coming up with the controversial
briefing
policies.
that's coming up speaks to me of that boys' club idea, that
honestly,
somehow
Stella,
the test that you set.
You cannot say that just because the Education Secretary, the Chancellor, who are in charge of some fairly controversial policies at the moment, because they're women, they shouldn't be criticised.
I'm not saying that.
Well, that's the implication.
No, I'm not. And that's an interesting way that you're reading it as that. What I'm saying is, time and time again, they are used as the examples. I think actually what they're doing is pretty brave policy making, and it's going to make a difference in the country. But I do think it is interesting in the background chatter that happens, and we all know that this happens. It's time and time again. It's women who are put up to that level of testing. That, to me, speaks to that wider boys' club. So I don't know about where Rosie is, but I do think we have to deal with the unconscious bias about women.
If you don't mind, Jemma.
Stella's in politics, in the hub of it all. I'm not, but my lived experience as a woman is that we are still... things are a lot better than they were when I started out in TV. My goodness me, I used to get a slap on the bum. I used to get, and it was normal.
I'm sorry about that.
It's fine. It was so normal. I didn't even sort of like bat an eyelid, and then you'd experience fairly creepy men taking you out for a glass of wine, sort of saying, but we're going to go and talk about a job. And you'd be thinking, are we talking about a job? Is this this? Is this this? So the idea that, these things aren't still happening, or that it isn't tougher for a woman to be taken seriously. On another note, I notice sometimes, it's just a small observation, that sometimes when I go on programmes, all the women I know who go on programmes really prep. It's like, I have to, get my facts straight. I really have to be able to back that up. And more commonly, and this isn't across the board, the men are more confident that they can go and just say what they think. And it's a small observation, but it's hard for you to sort of even imagine as a bloke. But, yeah.
I get that.
I get imposter syndrome.
I fall into that category, because if I go on to similar programmes to this, I don't prep, because I've realised that I'm better when I don't. But the adrenaline flows more and I perform better. But I don't think that's because I'm a man.
Maybe not.
You're not facing the drumbeat of misogyny that presumes that you probably won't be able to cut it.
So the type of abuse that we get online is slightly different.
It's much worse.
Yeah, you still. I mean, of course, we all get it. Men get it as well.
What's going on Twitter right now?
Well, it's interesting.
You get more about your looks, you get more about your age, you get more about your status, like if you're not married, if you're this, if you're that, you get that sort of rubbish.
Yeah. Could I answer Chris directly? There's a big problem with number 10. It's over-centralised. I contributed to an Institute for Government report on how the central government could be reformed, and because it is so centralised, I think that creates immense tensions that lead to quite bad behaviour, because people are under such huge pressure. So whatever flaws they may have are more likely to emerge. The second thing, David Owen wrote, the former Labour SDP leader, Labour politician, became the SDP leader. In fact, he didn't lead it. Anyway, rabbit hole.
No, he did.
We know who you mean.
David Owen.
Yes.
But he wrote a very interesting book called Hubris, which is all about how people do become very hubristic when they're in power. They start to believe that they're right just by having the position. And I'm afraid you did ask me what I was doing earlier. This is why I'm so interested in groupthink and how you introduce different perspectives into environments and create institutions which encourage that adversarial collaboration, to Tim's point, because it so obviously is a problem in number 10 and it's bad for us all. But with Rosie's comments, it'd be ever so easy to depart into partisan knockabout. But I think what she said was very important and should be taken seriously. But it's probably better to take it seriously within the Labour Party than to have Tory MPs and ex-MPs just exploiting what she said for a partisan.
I'd like to ask Jemma and Stella a direct question, if I may, because I absolutely agree with you on online abuse towards women. I think it's on a scale that men like me never experienced. And there's definitely been an old boys' club in lots of the media. But I definitely get, a lot of the time when I'm in an argument, sometimes with someone from a different race, sometimes a woman, there's quite often an accusation. It's not said necessarily directly, but I'm accused of bigotry or sexism or whatever. And I think some people do hide behind legitimate scrutiny by rushing to that charge of bigotry and homophobia or sexism, whatever.
Let me take that head on.
I think it's easier for you guys to deal with that, but do you acknowledge that?
No. So I think there's two different things. It's to understand that the environment in which we're not being judged on a level playing field. My point about it is that when people are challenging the Labour government, absolutely people get challenged. The hubris point is something different. The the people who get picked out first, that drumbeat that says probably the problem is the women, is so universal we don't see it. Ich-Heiser, if you want to look for your behavioural organisational links, Ich-Heisers, it's a problem so obvious that people don't see it. As people in that firing line, online and offline, because I get the abuse, but you also get the unconscious bias offline as well, you probably don't know about. It's what people might call mansplaining. What I'm saying is actually there's a whole new cohort of men and women who are part of it because you internalise it, who are repeating those kind of tropes about
I think
what
you've made
leadership
your
looks
point
like.
again and haven't really answered my question.
So do explain to me what I should be saying then.
No, I'm not. I'm saying what you should be saying. I'm just saying, do you concede that there are some women, partly because of the real problem we've identified of sexism, hide behind immediately like a first resort to defence, you're being a sexist towards me, rather than actually addressing the substantial point that perhaps people like me make?
Flip it round. Has there ever been a point when maybe that unconscious bias of years and years of training could have come into play in how you see things? Because I know, we all experience that.
You've answered my question.
Sorry, Jemma.
Do you want me to say that you're not a sexist, Tim? Is that what would make you feel better in order to move on to the conversation about misogyny?
You have just done what I was complaining about. I'm automatically accused of being a sexist for saying sometimes people...
I said, did you want me to say that?
I think what you're doing is you're trying to sort of navigate your way. Women have become more empowered. We've got more of a voice now. I agree that what you don't want to do, what nobody should be doing, is sort of weaponising that, because then it dilutes the very seriousness of it, and that it's horrible to be called sexist or racist or homophobe or any of those things. They're really serious things to call someone because they're deeply unpleasant things to be.
I remember being on a panel like this.
We can also all be so because we come from a background where that is the organisational psychology point about
Look at the Chris Pincher stuff. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That was Pretty Boys Club, right? It's that kind. Yeah, right. And there was a lot of that going on. At one point, there were awful lots of people with things hanging over their heads. And sadly, they were all male. Like, that was very prevalent at one point.
That is a great example, though, of what needs to change, isn't it? Because we're still in a workplace where we're not asked to tell HR if you're in a relationship with somebody. No other workplace would you accept such an inequality in power.
Okay. Well, we're slightly going off the subject. But... we all go on a programme called Politics Live on the BBC from time to time. It's a similar format to this in some ways. And I've found...
Better chaired,
yeah, obviously. Because it's chaired by a woman, obviously. And I've been on that programme where I've been the only male in the studio. No complaints about that at all. But I've found that the reaction... Whenever I try and debate with somebody on that programme where there is the rest of the panel are all female... If I sort of show any sign of interrupting, which is part of debate, I mean, it just is, the reaction from the audience is, misogynist. I'm thinking, no, it's just debating. And so I know when I go on that programme, I sit there demurely and just wait to be asked. Because I know what's going to happen if
I'd like to pick up on that. So I have got home a number of times and been told I should have stood up for myself more often when I've been on all women things, because to be honest, I like to be polite, hopefully, anyway. But no, I mean,
people like you, Steve.
Well, thank you. but yes, certain strong and independent women of my close acquaintance have told me that I've been too chivalrous, dare I say.
Can I ask the other side of that? Because I'll guarantee you now there'll be somebody on Twitter saying that I have talked too much, I've dominated the conversation. And actually...
To be fair.
Yeah, exactly. It's an easy, isn't it? It's an easy put down for women. You've taken up too much space. What I actually did when the first time that very first happened to me was a conversation with Austin Mitchell, because Austin Mitchell said it himself. I went back, I got a friend of mine who's a sound engineer to look at how much time. He'd spoken for 60% of the conversation, I spoke for 40. There's a brilliant study by Susan Sarandon that looks exactly at
40% with Austin.
Right. But our expectations, it's that drumbeat of misogyny says that women shouldn't talk equally.
We've gone way over time for this discussion, but it's been very enjoyable. But we have to go to a break. We'll come back in a moment with our fun question for the panel for the end. It's 8:49.
Oh my God.
LBC.
Listen.
Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
With us on the panel, Stella Creasy, Steve Baker, Jemma Forte and Tim Montgomerie. A text question now from Harry in Swindon. Israel's defence minister has vowed a deadly, precise and surprising attack against Iran after the missile attacks last week. In the long term, will this make the world safer or not? Now, Yoav Gallant has said this evening that Iran's attack last week was aggressive but imprecise, promising that Israel's own attack will be deadly, precise and above all surprising to Iran. Steve Baker.
I think it has to be remembered that Israel is a nation about the survival of the Jewish people in the context of its establishment post-Holocaust, and that is, I think, essential to remember. As far as I am aware from my conversations, Israel absolutely cannot tolerate Iran having a bomb, the nuclear bomb, and they simply must do what is necessary to prevent Iran getting a bomb. And they always will do that because they believe that Iran would use the bomb against Israel if they had it. So, but does it make the world a safer place? Well, I'm profoundly anti-war, but equally you need a strong defence. And if you genuinely believe someone will use a nuclear weapon against you if they get it, well, you've got to stop them getting it. But it's an incredibly dangerous and difficult time.
Jemma?
I find this completely terrifying. It just feels like the situation is escalating on a daily basis. Absolutely, to reiterate what you said at the top of this, that's, of course, and on October the 7th, like everybody else, was utterly horrified and grief-stricken, but I have to be honest, I've been horrified and grief-stricken every single day since then about the loss of life in Palestine as well, and the thousands of children who've been maimed, orphaned. It blows my mind that this is happening in this day and age. I feel personally like Netanyahu's completely out of control. I know that Biden has been trying his best to urge diplomacy, but he hasn't put any red lines in. There doesn't seem to be any boundaries. And, if Israel are able to go and bomb and injure people in Lebanon, why does anybody expect that Lebanon aren't going to fight back? And bombing Iran, of course Iran are going to escalate after that. Diplomacy is the only way that peace can be achieved. And Netanyahu used the words the other day about clearing out, and it was sinister. And we all have social media these days, and you see these clips.
Wasn't he using those words about Hezbollah, though? I mean, wouldn't we, as people who think of Hezbollah as a terrorist group, want them cleared out?
Yeah, we want the terrorist group cleared out, of course. We want Hamas cleared out. But looking at Netanyahu's actions at this point, it doesn't seem to me, as a bystander, that top of his list is the safety and return of those hostages, and then finding
I think that's a fair accusation. But when you said that Lebanon, it's only fair that they can hit back, it's not Lebanon. The rockets were coming from Hezbollah, not the Lebanese authorities.
Yeah.
And so surely Israel has a right to defend itself against those kind of attacks and root out the Hezbollah terrorists.
And listen, I'm not an expert on geopolitics. I just see, what was it, the attack with the iPads or whatever, and it's the loss of life, it's the orphanages.
But they were all Hezbollah terrorists.
Hospitals.
I mean, there were civilian casualties in that. You're absolutely right.
Casualties. And I know they took out the leader of Hezbollah and so on, but to me, I personally find it, the amount of times I've gone to bed and I'm terrible, I shouldn't be on my phone, obviously, but then I'm on Instagram and then you see a clip and I can't watch these clips anymore. I've had to zone out. No, but I'm sort of conflicted. I don't sit there and watch them every night. Of course I don't. I get on with my life and I watch telly and have a lovely life. But there are moments where I think, we need to be addressing what's happening here. And it's horrifying.
Stella.
I mean, this is obviously the week of the anniversary.
Yeah.
And in this week, I have spoken to one of my constituents whose father, Oded Lifshitz, is being held by Hamas. He was a peace activist from one of the kibbutz. I'm trying to get a constituent out of Lebanon who is terrified at what is going on. I have constituents who have Palestinian family and friends who are desperately horrified by what is happening. So we feel it very directly. I think the challenge here, Steve is right about this existential sense of fear, is what is the plan? Because actually what is the Israeli military is doing right now, and I make a very clear distinction between the Israeli military and Israel as a country, is doing, it's a huge amount of land. So actually, what is the plan here? Where does this end? Because there isn't a military solution to this in the long run in terms of actually securing a safe Israel and a free Palestine. And I think most people agree that that's probably where we need to get to.
Yeah.
So there's a very real fear that everything that's happening right now takes us further away. And the question is, what can the international community do? How can we intervene in an environment where there is a failure of political leadership on all sides? There are innocent civilians in horrific circumstances. There's been a massive loss of life. There's complete destruction. It is one where we're all on the edge of our seats about, can they have those conversations? Can they de-escalate? Because it looks very grim at the moment. The idea that this is simple, and the idea that you just pick a side and that somehow this is what self-defense looks like, or this is what genocide looks like, it just doesn't accord to the seriousness of the situation.
Tim?
I think I agree with everything that Steve has said, and ultimately, of course, we're going to need diplomatic solutions. People are going to have to sit down, break bread, and become friends again. But just at the moment, Iran is on the verge, potentially, of nuclear weapons. And Steve is absolutely right. If they get those nuclear weapons, I would not want to be an Israeli. And I think Biden is completely wrong to tell Israel not to target Iran's nuclear facilities. At the moment, that might be about Israel's basic survival. And if I was in Tel Aviv, if I was in Jerusalem, I'd be hoping Netanyahu targeted those nuclear facilities, because it's the only way Israel can be sure of its security.
Right, I have a fun question. I'm not sure fun is the right way to talk about this,
That's a
because it's
segue.
about death. It's from Jennifer in Harrogate. My Way by Frank Sinatra has topped a list of songs thought to be the most popular among people who are reaching the end of their lives, based on a survey by the cancer charity Marie Curie. It's a bit morbid, but what song would you each choose to be the last one you hear if you could? Steve?
My favourite band ever, AC/DC. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
I thought you were going to say Highway to Hell.
Yeah, I was going to say.
No, I'm a Christian, I'm saved. But so it's not Highway to Hell, but it is a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
That's why you're Zen, Steve.
Gemma?
Oh, God, what a horrible moment it would be knowing it, like counting down. Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve,
I
or
love that.
Candy
that's a good
Staton.
one.
You know,
Yeah.
sometimes I feel, or I've Got a Lovely Bunch of Coconuts, just for a laugh.
Okay. Stella?
None of you. I mean, for me, the song I would listen to, because it's a song that means the most to me in life, is the Flying Pickets version of Only You.
Oh, that is good.
Because I remember it as a kid listening to my mum and dad. It's just a sentimental song.
Trumped by Alison Moyet, I would say.
Yeah, but the Flying Pickets, or their version of When You Were Young and in Love.
That was my audition for Smooth FM. When I was listening. Tim?
For fun, I'd have anything by Elvis Presley, because the sort of the soundtrack.
There ain't nothing but a hound dog.
Anything by Elvis Presley, but
yeah.
I'm going to be holy. Thine be the glory would be my choice, my favourite hymn.
I would choose Bat Out of Hell by Meatloaf.
Well, I
Right.
was thinking how great they are, but I chose my favourite.
Monday's panel, we have the Green Party's Deputy Leader, Zach Belansky, former Conservative MP, Anna Firth, the long-time advisor to Nigel Farage, Gawain Towler, expect some fireworks from
that'll be
him,
interesting.
and the comedian and journalist Ava Vidal. Now, but just before we go to the news, I just want to pay a very, very short tribute to a woman called Lily Abert, who died today, I think, at the age of 100. She was a Holocaust survivor, and her great-grandson, Dov Foreman, came on the programme about a year ago, and we spent an hour with him talking about her memoirs. She was a great lady and deserves to be remembered by everyone.
Yeah.
Well said, Ian. Well said.
Coming up in the next hour, we are going to talk about the storms it's a hurricane in Florida. We're going to talk to LBC's oldest new listener, believe it or not, 104-year-old from Wales. So that will be about 9:30. Really looking forward to that.
Have they got a podcast?
I don't think he has got a podcast,
Yet.
but apparently he's quite a character and doesn't look his age. We're also going to be talking about Labour's Rent and Rights Act, bill, which was going through Parliament today. A lot of landlords are saying, well, if this goes through, we are going to get out of the property market. Now, a lot of people might say, well, landlords are just evil people, so that's a good thing. But you do need landlords to have properties to rent, don't you?
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, millions of people in Florida are preparing for possibly one of the worst storms in 100 years.
I've been a Florida resident for 12 years, and this is the most nervous I've ever been for a storm.
Tornadoes have begun to touch down in Florida ahead of the arrival of Hurricane Milton. President Biden's told people to leave their homes, and it's a matter of life and